My sister's child isn't hers, it's mine, and nobody knows but me and him. I've lived with this secret eating me alive for 6 years. I didn't plan for it to happen, and sometimes I lie to myself and pretend I didn't mean for it to unfold the way it did. But that's not true. I knew what I was doing every step of the way. I watched it spiral and I let it. I pushed it. And now, every time I see her, a little girl with my exact eyes and my father's weird laugh, I feel like I'm slowly bleeding out from the inside. I can't look at her without my chest clenching in this mixture of longing and shame so potent, I've started shaking whenever I know I'll be around her. This little person who thinks I'm her aunt, who hugs me and says she loves me, who is so close and so impossibly far away. I'm not her aunt, I'm her mother. But the world thinks my sister is 6.5 years ago. I was in my final year of college, a few months from graduating, burnt out, drifting through a long-term situationship with a guy I'd never introduce to my family. I didn't even like him. He was a warm body. I was, for lack of a better term, unraveling quietly. Meanwhile, my sister Hannah had just gotten married to Kyle. High school sweethearts. Perfect couple, perfect house, perfect plan. They were trying for a baby, everyone knew it, and they were getting nowhere. Hannah and I have never been close. We didn't fight, we just didn't mesh. She was the golden child. I was the awkward one. She was cheer captain and prom queen and a speech-language pathologist by 24. I was the artsy weirdo with one foot always hovering above the eject button. But our parents loved us both in their own ways. They just assumed Hannah was the one who'd settle down first, and she did. She always got what she wanted, until she didn't. I came home for winter break that year because my dad had just been diagnosed with a heart condition, and Mom was hovering like a hawk. Hannah had invited me to stay with her and Kyle for a while, less out of love, more out of obligation. They had a guest room. I think she hoped I'd help clean or cook while she dealt with doctor's appointments and fertility medications. I didn't mind. I wasn't doing anything with my life anyway. Kyle was not what I expected. I mean, I'd known him for years, but always at arm's length. To me, he was just the tall, athletic guy who had laser focus on Hannah, the guy who called her babe and wore polos to family BBQs. But alone, with no Hannah home, he was something else. Quiet, kind, thoughtful, funny in this dry, self-deprecating way. One night we were watching an old comedy on the couch, and we both laughed so hard we started crying. He told me he hadn't laughed like that in months. Then things started happening. Nothing overt. Lingering glances, close proximity, conversations that felt like we were tiptoeing around the edges of something neither of us would say out loud. Then one night, God help me, I kissed him. I initiated it, and he didn't pull away. We didn't stop after that. Hannah was gone. A lot. Work late, fertility appointments, overnight with friends. Kyle and I would circle each other like moths to flame until we were burned all over. It felt wrong and right at the same time. The guilt would rise and then dissolve in the warmth of his mouth on my skin. I told myself lies. I told myself he loved me, that he was trapped in something he didn't want, that Hannah didn't love him the way I could. It ended abruptly. I found out I was pregnant. I was terrified. My period was late, I was throwing up, and I just knew. I took 4 tests in their guest bathroom while Kyle was at work and Hannah was out with friends. All positive. My hands shook, I didn't even cry. Just stared at the lines and knew something unchangeable had just been set in motion. I told Kyle. He didn't say anything for the longest time. When he finally did, he said, "We can't tell her." He didn't mean, "We'll figure this out." He meant, "We bury it." I asked if he wanted me to terminate it. He said he didn't know. He paced and finally said, "She'll be destroyed. I can't do that to her." I felt like I'd just swallowed boiling oil. Because I didn't want to terminate. I didn't even know why yet. Maybe part of me wanted a piece of him, maybe I wanted something of my own. Or maybe I just couldn't kill something that already existed inside me. So I left. Told them I'd gotten a job back near school, and that I had to cut the break short. I ghosted Kyle's messages, deleted his number. I didn't go back to school. I rented a tiny apartment with money I didn't have, and disappeared from there. Lives for 7 months. And then something even more twisted happened. I was barely surviving, working part-time at a coffee shop, sick all the time. I hadn't told anyone, not my parents, not friends, not even the father. I was holed up in this dim, stuffy apartment when I started bleeding at 30 weeks. I thought I was losing her. The hospital admitted me. I called my mom and broke down. She came, took one look at me and started sobbing. I couldn't lie anymore. I told her the baby was a result of a one-night stand, someone who wasn't in the picture, and she, mercifully, didn't. Ask for more, but Hannah did. She came storming into my hospital room, eyes wide, lips trembling. "How long?" she asked. "Who?" I lied again. Said it was someone from school. She didn't believe me. But then she said something that shocked me more than anything. She asked if she could adopt my baby, just like that. She and Kyle had been denied again. She thought it was fate, that maybe it was God's plan. I stared at her like she'd grown two heads. I said I needed time. I told her I hadn't decided. I kept the baby. But they visited the hospital after the birth. They held her. They brought flowers and stuffed animals. I named her Lily. It was a name I'd always loved. The next few weeks were a blur. Postpartum. Depression hit me like a truck. I was alone, exhausted, terrified, no money, no support. And one night I found myself watching Lily sleep and thinking, I'm not enough for her. She deserves a real family. She deserves stability. I thought about how much Hannah had wanted a baby, how much my parents would adore a grandchild raised in a home with money and structure. And I did something I still don't fully forgive myself for. I said yes. They arranged everything through private channels. No court battle, no paperwork delays. I signed the forms. She was adopted. On paper and in life, Hannah became her mother, and I became Auntie M. Emily, the cool, mysterious aunt who lived out of town and only visited occasionally, but I never really left. I moved 2 towns over and visited for holidays. I watched her grow, every milestone, every scraped knee, every birthday party. She looks more like me every year. I see her frown and it's mine. I see the way she furrows her brows when she's focused, and it's my mirror. Sometimes I want to scream, and other times I want to disappear. But here's the twist, the part I've never told a soul. Kyle still looks at me like I'm the mother of his child, and sometimes, in weak moments, we talk. He never stopped loving her, or me. I don't think. He loves Hannah. I think he loves the life he built with her because it keeps the secret safe. He once told me, when Lily was 3, that if I ever wanted to blow it all up, he'd leave and take her with me. I laughed in his face and told him I wasn't a monster. But now she's starting to ask questions. Why do I have green eyes like Aunt Emily? Why do we like all the same things? Hannah brushes it off. Kyle looks panicked. And me? I'm watching this house of cards start to tilt. Every time Lily hugs me, I wonder how long until she figures it out. Every time I see Hannah tuck her into bed, I wonder if the guilt will finally break my brain. I am the mother of a little girl who doesn't know me. I let my sister raise my daughter, and now I'm stuck in this purgatory of pretending, of aching, of hiding. I don't know how much longer I can do it, but I also know if I told the truth I'd destroy everything. I buried my wife's diary, then dug it up when she disappeared. I think I knew something was wrong with her before we even got married, but I ignored it. I loved her, or at least I loved the version of her that she allowed me to see, the one she stitched together out of politeness, laughter, carefully timed kisses, and long silences that I mistook for depth. Her name was Elise. She was beautiful in that way people write about in novels, pale, wide-eyed, quietly magnetic. The kind of beauty that seems like it was never meant for daylight. When I met her, she was working at a bookstore, one of those little used places that smells like mildew and dust and secrets. I was just another customer at first. I asked her to recommend something to shake me out of a rut. She gave me House of Leaves and smirked like she was testing me. She said, "You won't finish it, no one does." I did. I came back. She smiled when she saw me. That's how it started. We were engaged within 10 months. I thought it was fast. My friends said so too. But Elise had a way of making everything feel like a dream you didn't want to wake up from. She moved into my apartment, made my barren rooms into something warmer. She painted in her free time, mostly abstracts, mostly dark colors. I told her once that her work made me feel like I was drowning in velvet. She said that was the nicest thing anyone had ever said about her art. She cried after. That was the first time I saw her cry, and I should have paid more attention to how she cried. Not loud, not dramatic. She sat completely still while tears streamed down her cheeks, like she was watching them happen from outside her body. I asked her why. She said, "I'm just not used to people seeing me. We got married in late 4, a small ceremony. She wore a vintage lace dress that looked like it belonged to a Victorian ghost. My parents adored her. My sister didn't. She told me something about Elise didn't sit right. She's always doff," she said, like she's trying on different skins and doesn't know which one fits. I got angry, told her to keep her opinions to herself. She didn't come to the wedding. The first few months were fine, blissful, even. Then strange things started happening. Little things at first. Elise would go out in the middle of the night saying she couldn't sleep and needed a walk. Sometimes I'd wake up and she'd be staring out the window, whispering things I couldn't quite catch. Once I caught her standing in the hallway in the dark, just standing. When I said her name, she turned slowly and said, "I didn't know you could see me." Then she laughed and said she was dreaming, but she wasn't. One day I came home early and found her burning pages in the kitchen sink. I asked what she was doing. She said she was purging old thoughts. I looked at the paper. It was a journal, handwritten. I saw my name. I saw phrases, like "he doesn't know and I keep pretending." She saw me looking and pushed me out of the room. She told me it was just poetry, that she was working through trauma, that I shouldn't read it because it would contaminate me. I told her I was worried. She smiled and kissed my cheek and said, "Then you should be." I started snooping. I'm not proud of it, but something about the whole thing made me feel like I was living with a stranger in my wife's body. I found another journal hidden under the mattress. I only read a few entries. They were off. Fragments of thoughts that didn't feel like her. Or maybe they did, and I was just starting to see her for real. Phrases like, "I dream of blood every night now." He doesn't hear it. The tapping. I don't think he can. I think the other me is winning. Then, he would never love me if he knew what I really am. I confronted her. She denied everything, said I was invading her privacy, said she was experimenting with horror writing, said I should trust her. I did, for a while. But then she started disappearing for hours. Her phone was always dead. She'd come home with her hair wet and her clothes smelling like pine or sulfur, or sometimes nothing at all, like the absence of smell. She'd smile and pretend nothing was wrong. I stopped sleeping. I started drinking. I thought I was going crazy. Then, 2 weeks before our 1-year anniversary, she vanished. I mean, completely vanished. I came home from work, and the door was unlocked. Her shoes were gone, her purse was still there. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, and every painting in the apartment had been slashed down the middle like someone had taken a knife to her entire identity. There was one message left on the bathroom mirror, scrawled in lipstick. "I'm not Elise anymore." The police opened a missing person case. They asked questions. I lied. I didn't tell them about the journals. I didn't tell them about the midnight disappearances, or the dead-eyed crying, or the fact that I sometimes woke up to her standing at the foot of the bed, whispering in a voice that didn't sound human. I said she'd been acting distant, that I thought she was depressed. I wanted them to find her. But I also didn't. I was terrified. Weeks passed. Then months. The police gave up. Her family blamed me. Her mother said I'd broken her. Her father said he never should have trusted me. I almost started to believe them. Until I remembered the diary I had buried. See, before Elise vanished, I'd found one more notebook, the darkest one. I didn't want to keep it in the house. Something about it felt wrong, like it radiated cold. I buried it in the woods behind our apartment complex, wrapped in a plastic bag under a dead tree I used to climb as a kid. And after she disappeared, I went back for it. The notebook was intact. I brought it inside, waited until night, and read it cover to cover. Every line peeled back another layer of a person I didn't know. She talked about rituals, about something called the mirror self, about leaving the skin behind. She described waking dreams where she would drown in her own reflection, only to emerge on the other side whole, different, reborn. She talked about a place beneath the house, even though we lived in an apartment. And near the end, she wrote, "Soon the other me will finish what I started. He'll find her beautiful too. He'll finally see." The last entry was written in a different handwriting. I don't know how to explain it. I know how crazy this sounds, but I swear it wasn't Elise's writing. It was sharper, angular, like whoever wrote it had never held a pen before. It only said one thing: "Thank you for the vessel." That night, I had the worst dream of my life. Elise was in the corner of the bedroom, only it wasn't Elise. Her skin was grey, stretched too tight. Her eyes were completely black. She crawled toward me like a spider and whispered, "Do you still love me now?" I woke up screaming. The sheets were wet, not with sweat, but with water, like pond water. The smell of pine filled the room. I haven't slept properly since. It's been 3 years. No one ever found her. No body, no leads. Just a note in lipstick and a trail of broken memories. But sometimes, when I'm walking alone at night, I see someone watching me. A pale woman, with wide black eyes. She never gets close, but I feel her. I feel it, and sometimes I swear to God and I want to follow her. Because sometimes I think I understand now. I think I see what she was trying to become. And I'm starting to wonder if I still want her back. My husband insists on keeping this one painting of a woman. When my husband and I first got married and moved in together, we had a few fights. On personal space, on chores, and on decor. Namely, my husband insisted on keeping this weird painting of a woman. "Who is she?" I'd asked when I first saw it, leaned against a mountain of moving boxes. Dunno, got it at a rummage sale. It was an original painting, oil I think, judging by the way the light reflected off the brush strokes. It depicted a young woman standing in a dark room, looking over her shoulder at the viewer. She was actually rather beautiful. blonde hair falling over her shoulders like a waterfall, a white cotton dress, a dainty, heart-shaped face that was somehow haunting rather than cute. She was illuminated brightly, but the room behind her was dark. The contrast and her pose reminded me a little bit of Girl with a Pearl Earring, but it didn't feel classy or pensive or beautiful. Instead, it felt creepy, especially because my husband insisted on hanging it above our bed. I mean, it's a beautiful painting, I said, but it just doesn't fit with the modern decor. Neither do your Funko Pops. Okay, but they're small. This painting is enormous. For Pete's sake, the woman is nearly life-sized. I want to keep her where she is. It seemed like a big deal to him, so I dropped it. But it wasn't easy. Sometimes I woke up in the middle of the night with the horrible feeling that I was being watched. Then I'd look up and see her haunting grey eyes staring down at me. I didn't get much sleep after that, and there was the one time I swear she moved. Was her hand always like that? I asked Eric after getting into bed one night. Her left hand, the fingers are kind of open, reaching out behind her, like she's waiting for someone to grab her hand. Yeah, she was always like that. I could have sworn she wasn't always like that. Then again, I generally avoided looking at the painting. It was so uncomfortably realistic. When I stared into those grey eyes, I almost felt like I was making eye contact with a person. I lasted 2 weeks. Then I begged Eric to move it. Can we please move the painting somewhere else? I really hate looking at it when I'm going to sleep. It's the nicest piece of art we have. It belongs above the bed. What about the sunflower one? That's just a print, he complained, and it's so basic. Come on, I'll move my Funko Pops out if you move the painting out. He heaved a long sigh. Fine, I'll move her. That was another thing. He often referred to the painting as her. It was weird, so he moved it to the stairs. But honestly, that was worse. Every time I went downstairs, there she was, staring at me from above the landing with those piercing, grey eyes. At least when the painting was in the bedroom, I was usually asleep or facing the opposite direction. I hit my breaking point a few days after that. For some reason, I couldn't sleep. After tossing and turning for an hour, I decided to grab a snack downstairs. I got to the top of the stairs, and there she was. I hadn't turned on the main lights, only the night light in the hall bathroom was on. With everything so dark, the background of the painting melted into the shadows, but the woman still stood out, with her pale face and white dress, and my stupid, sleepy brain interpreted it as an actual person standing there. I jumped about a foot in the air, and I would have fallen all the way down the stairs had I not caught the banister at the last second. Can we please get rid of that painting? I asked the next morning. Eric turned away from the stove, set the spatula down. Why? Last night it scared the frick out of me. I nearly fell down the stairs. He stared at me as if unable to understand. She scared you? He asked slowly. Well, more like startled me. I thought it was actually a person standing there. He looked at me, then he broke into laughter. And after a few seconds I started laughing too. It was pretty stupid now that I thought about it. I know I was sleepy, but still, I thought the painting was a person. What did I think we were being burglarized by a young, beautiful blonde woman in a nightdress? For now, I'll move her into my office. Then you don't have to look at her at all. That sounds good. And for a while after that, things were okay. I sort of noticed Eric spending more time in his office than usual, but he also had a big deadline for a brief coming up. And what? How would that be related to the painting anyway? It's not like he was staring at her for hours on end, except that's exactly what I caught him doing. One night he didn't come downstairs to eat dinner with me. I called up to him a few times. No reply. So I went upstairs and walked into his office to find him staring at her. He was just sitting there, with his computer closed, no papers on the desk, swivel chair turned towards the woman in the painting. Oh, he said suddenly when I walked in. Then he quickly stood up. I was just about to come down, just sent in the brief a few minutes ago. They're really happy with it. He smiled broadly at me, as if nothing were wrong, and then slipped past me. I listened to his footsteps thump down the stairs. Had he actually just finished working, or was he just sitting in here, staring at her? I ultimately decided not to. Bring it up. The painting was out of my sight, and that was great. Besides, I had bigger fish to fry, like my own deadline coming up for an article I hadn't even started. But then, on Friday afternoon, I accidentally overheard him on the phone. His voice was muffled through the thick wooden door, but it wasn't hard to hear him. He was shouting almost. I'll have it in by tonight. No, I knew it was due on Wednesday. Well, my wife fell down the stairs. I had to take her to the hospital. Those words sent a chill through me. I barged in. Why are you lying about me falling down the stairs? His face paled. He ended the call and turned towards me. I'm so sorry, Tara, but I needed an excuse. I missed the deadline on that brief, and it's my job on the line. The brief you told me you finished 2 days ago. He nodded, silently. Crossed my arms. Look, Eric, your work is your business, but we've spent like all of 1 hour together all week, because you've been locked in here all day, every day. I mean, are you even working, or are you just sitting in here staring at her? His dark eyes locked on mine, and then his voice grew soft. "You're jealous of her." "What?" "You shouldn't be, Tara," he said, stepping towards me. "The painting makes her prettier than she was." I froze, stared at him. Then I finally found the words. "Are you saying this is a painting of someone you know?" "No," he said, slowly. "Sorry, I misspoke. I meant whoever this is a portrait of. I'm sure it's a flattering likeness. All portraits are flattering like that." I stared at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "Who is this a painting of, Eric?" "I told you, it's not Eric." I stepped towards him. My legs felt weak, wobbling underneath me. "Who is this a painting of?" He only shook his head. I couldn't sleep that night. I know it sounds silly being so worked up over a painting, but you have to admit it was weird. He was obsessed with this thing for whatever reason. Why didn't I see the painting when we were dating? Did he hide it away in the basement? That was the one place I'd never been. Had he built a little shrine down there, painting, candles, the whole 9 yards? The thought of it made me sick. Is it an ex-girlfriend? An ex-wife? Even that he never told me about. Getting a painting commissioned must have cost a fortune, especially a huge, detailed one like this. I mean, as much as I hated that thing, it was clearly done by someone incredibly gifted. The glint in those piercing grey eyes, the small dimple on her right cheek. But clearly he wasn't keeping it to appreciate the artistry. He knew her, and whoever she is, he's obsessed with her. And then I got the craziest idea. I sat up in bed, slowly, quietly, turned to Eric. He was fast asleep. Then I slipped out from underneath the covers, grabbed my phone from the nightstand and tiptoed out of the room. My bare feet padded softly across the hallway as I made my way towards his office. Then I pushed the heavy wooden door open and stepped inside. The office was cold, much colder than our bedroom. Goosebumps pricked up my bare arms, but I didn't waste any time. I reached over, fumbling across the wall, and hit the switch. The light flicked on. The blonde woman stared down at me from the wall. Her eyes seemed to follow me as I took Eric's leather chair and dragged it across the hardwood. Once against the wall, I stepped up onto it. We were staring at each other, face to face. I'd never been this close to the painting before, my face inches from hers. This close, I could truly appreciate the detail. Each individual eyelash painstakingly drawn, curving up from its follicle. Thread-like striations of light and dark grey filling her irises. Her skin so pale and creamy, dotted with the tiniest of pores. But I wasn't here to appreciate the artwork. I lifted my phone and took a photo. Then I brought up a reverse image search. It took a few minutes for me to find the right website and upload the photo. But when the results loaded, I gasped. I expected maybe one result if I were lucky. Some sort of facial recognition that would match the painted face to a photo. Or maybe the artist's website would come up and mention who the subject was. But instead, dozens of thumbnails filled the page, of the exact same painting I'd been staring at for weeks. Fingers trembling, I clicked on the first one. It led to a news article. Search continues for missing Franklin art student. My heart dropped. Little black dots danced in my vision. I collapsed into the chair behind me, trembling, and began to read. Anya Kelsing, 23, went missing after a hike with her boyfriend. The two became separated when they came upon a bear. Her backpack was found roughly a mile from where the sighting occurred, but no trace of Anya was found. And the caption under the painting, Kelsing is a third-year student at Franklin College, majoring in fine arts. She recently completed a self-portrait that was exhibited at Le Coeur, above. I clicked on the next article, and the next, but they all said the same thing. Hike bear disappearance. All of them showed a photo along with her self-portrait. She looked strikingly identical to her painted likeness. None of them mentioned the boyfriend's name, but it had to be Eric. The most recent article from 5 years ago was a video clip of her parents begging for her search to continue. Sadly, judging by the news articles, it never did. I don't know how long I sat there. All I know is that I was suddenly jolted from my thoughts by a loud thump in the hallway. Footsteps. Coming towards the office. I shot up. He can't find me. Here. I glanced around the room looking for someplace, any place that I could hide, but it was probably too late. Surely he'd seen the light on from under the door. I ducked under the desk just as he stepped into the room. Tara? I clapped my hand over my mouth, trying to silence my ragged breathing. He's going to see the chair out of place. He knows I'm here. He knows... Tara, you in here? Why did I hide? I could have just said I came in here because I heard a noise. Needed a pen. Couldn't sleep. Why the fuck did I hide? Now he's gonna know that I know. Tara? But maybe it's fine. Maybe the bear got Anya. Maybe Eric had nothing to do with it. Isn't that more likely than Eric being a murderer? There you are. I looked up and screamed. Eric was crouched there in front of the desk, staring at me. I was looking for a pen, I stuttered lamely. I wanted to write down. I remembered I have to pick up groceries tomorrow and I needed to add something. He tilted his head, a small smile on his lips. I don't think that's the truth, Tara. Make a break for it. I started to lunge out from under the desk. His hand quickly shot out and grabbed my wrist, hard. You figured out who she is, didn't you? That's the only reason you'd be hiding from me. I trembled in his grasp. What did you do to her? I whispered. He let out a dry laugh. So you think I'm a murderer? How nice. That's the first conclusion you jumped to. No, I don't think you're a murderer. I swallowed. Stupid. If he killed her and he knows you know, then you're dead too. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Just what happened? They didn't find a body. Did the bear get her? He didn't reply, just stared at me silently with those cold, dark eyes. I was jealous, I continued desperately. But now I understand. I wish you'd just told me. To lose someone like that, which of course you'd want to keep the painting. It's all you have left of her. You should have just left it alone, he said, his tone oddly emotionless. I'm sorry you had to. Find out this way. I screamed as he lunged for me. It's over. His hands were clenched tight on my wrists as he dragged me out from under the desk. I pulled back, trying to wrench myself free, but it was no use. Thump! A loud crash sounded. Behind us. Eric whipped around and for a split second, his grip released. I acted instantly. Pulled free from him and ran, pivoting around the desk and racing towards the door. As I glanced back, I saw Eric, starting after me. But I also saw what had made the noise. The painting of Anya had fallen from the wall. It lay askew on the floor, her grey eyes staring emptily upwards. I was always a fast runner. Eric was only halfway down the stairs by the time I was at the bottom. Bursting out into the cold air, I began to scream. He grabbed me from behind and tried to pull me back inside, but it was too late. Lights were flicking on. Our neighbor rushed out of his house, dialing 911. It was over. The police arrested Eric for assault. And once I told them my story of his obsession with Anya's painting, they were able to search our house. And hidden in his office drawer, a small box, was a pair of gold earrings. The same earrings Anya wore on the hike that day. The case is slowly mounting against him. I'm hoping, praying Anya gets justice and that a jury convicts him of her horrible murder. And would he have done the same to me if I hadn't escaped? If Anya's painting hadn't fallen off the wall, there was an explanation, of course. When Eric had moved the painting to his office, he'd mistakenly installed one of the hangers into pure drywall. The weight of the painting had caused it to rip out and the painting fell. But sometimes I think Anya was watching over me, that her self-portrait carried a piece of her. And that night, she'd protected me from falling victim to the monster who ended her life. The painting now hangs up in my foyer. Every day I walk by it, and new details pop out at me. The deep, shadowy green of the room behind her. A perfectly painted strand of blonde hair. The glint in her piercing grey eyes, and sometimes I think she's smiling back at me. My wife has a removable face. I've never glimpsed what lies beneath it, but my best friend has. Samantha told me about it on our third date. We were watching a movie on her couch when I made my move to kiss her. She whipped her hand in front of my face and blocked me. There's something you need to know, she said. I braced myself. Here it comes. I'm not ready for a relationship, nothing to do with you, of course. It was the absolute last thing that I wanted to hear because I was already crazy about her. Okay, I said. I have a removable face. That's a new one. You have a what now? I was about to laugh, but she was wearing a deadly serious expression. I have a removable face. Is that like a metaphor or something? No. My face is literally removable. Look, closely. She lifted her chin and traced her jawline with a finger. You can see the seam. After admiring how beautiful her neck was for a dizzying moment, I leaned in for an inspection. It was very hard to see, but it did look like there was a slightly unnatural transition there from her face to her throat. I grew dizzier as a dozen questions rushed into my brain. Don't bother asking why or how or anything like that, said Samantha. I can't tell you that. If that's going to be a problem, you should leave now. I'm letting you know this because I like you and I want to take the next step, but this is non-negotiable. Okay, I said, unsure of what was happening. Not a problem, so what? You have a removable face, who cares, it looks good. There's something else. Once a day, usually in the evening, I have to remove the face and disinfect the inside of it. If I don't, it will rot. This takes about an hour, give or take, depending on how my day went. During this time, you must never ever look at my real face. Never. Do you understand? Yes. Got it. Don't ask about it. Don't look at your real face. Samantha stood up. Now, I'm going to go into the bathroom and clean my face. That will give you plenty of time to think about what I've told you. If you're here when I'm done, that's great. I would like that. But if you're gone, I'll understand. She turned and walked into her bedroom. I sat in stunned silence as I heard the bathroom door close. I gave the thing some serious thought. It was possible that it was a joke of some kind. It was possible that it was a delusion. Was it possible that it was true? Well, it was certainly possible to transform an actor's face with movie makeup, so I supposed it was possible that Samantha wore a removable face every day. Maybe she had had a horrible accident where her flesh had been mangled. Maybe her face had been melted by acid, or burned by fire, or the skin shorn off by heavy machinery. If it had, I would never know, because she would never tell me and I would never see it. I pictured a face of raw, naked muscle rotting away. Could I kiss her if that was what I was kissing? But wasn't that what we all were under the skin? Just muscle and bone and blood and squishy organs? I paced around the living room, running my hand through my hair. I liked Samantha a lot. She was smart and funny and beautiful. But was that beauty real? Did it count? Did it matter if it was real or not? Was I being superficial, even worrying about it? When she came out of the bathroom, I was still there. I looked at her face. She smiled and I was in love. We dated, we moved in together, we decided to get married. For the most part, it was a completely normal relationship, typical of two young people in love, building a life together. During the day, it was easy to forget about the face altogether. It looked natural enough, and only in certain positions, in certain lights, was there ever any indication that it wasn't natural. But every night was the same. Samantha would close herself in the bathroom, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 2, and clean the inside of her face. The curiosity never left me. I would sit there and wonder what was under that face. I came so close to barging in on her a few times, but I never did. I did occasionally ask her about it. About what, if anything, had happened. About how it was possible to make the removable face look so real. About what it really looked like underneath. I tried to coax her into showing me, assuring her that I loved her no matter what, and didn't give a damn what her real face looked like. I was just curious, that's all. She never showed me or told me the story behind it. She didn't get upset at me, unless I was really badgering her. She'd just shrug and say, "You know you all can't see it. How you know I can't tell you about it?" I never told anybody about Samantha's removable face. It's not that she asked me not to. I just didn't think it was anybody's business. Except once, I did tell somebody. It was during my bachelor's party. We had rented several cabins in Big Sur and spent the night drinking and packing our noses with powders that we shouldn't have been packing our noses with. Everyone else had passed out, and the sun was creeping up behind us as I stood on the majestic cliffs with my friend Chris, looking down on the Pacific waves crashing against the rocks. Chris was my best friend, as close to a brother as I'd known. We'd grown up together and visited each other at college often and spent the summers together. After college, we'd moved to different cities, but we stayed in close contact. Standing there on the cliffs, I told Chris about Samantha's removable face. At first, he thought I was joking. Then he had 1,000 questions, most of which I couldn't answer. What's underneath? I don't know, man, I don't know. Doesn't that drive you crazy, not knowing? I shrugged. Lots of stuff I don't know. Don't know how to do calculus, and I don't know what happens when we die. But dude, she's about to be your wife, and you don't even know what she looks like. I mean, I'd have to take a look. Like you could set a camera up in the bathroom. That's where she does it, right? Set up a camera and have a look, and then you'll know. I sighed. Yeah, it drives me crazy. I've asked her 1,000,000 times, but she told me I could never look. Gotta respect that, man, even if I don't like it. That's love. Chris laughed. You telling me to respect a woman? Up is down now. Then we fell back into talking about old times as a new day dawned. Chris was in town for business last week and planned on spending the weekend at our house. The conversation at Big Sur had happened 4 years ago, and we hadn't spoken about Samantha's removable face since, despite keeping in close contact and seeing each other as often as two people transforming into adults in different parts of the country. Yet it happened on Saturday evening. We were lounging lazily in the backyard deep into the beer, having just finished with some grilled steaks, when I got a text from work. God damn it, I groaned. I have to make a work call. Seriously? Said Samantha, raising an artificial eyebrow. On a Saturday night? My biggest client, baby. Sorry. It is what it is, I guess, said my wife. I'm going to head inside and get cleaned up. Chris, are you okay just hanging out for a bit? Chris smiled. I'll be fine. Got my beer, got some weeds to pull in your garden. God knows your lazy-ass husband isn't going to do it. Those tomatoes are choking to death. It's a tragedy. I rolled my eyes and went into the side yard to make my call. Minutes into it, I heard the screams coming from inside. Both my best friend and my wife were wailing in terror. I dropped the phone and ran into the house and down the hall to our bedroom. Through the open door, I could see that the door to the master bathroom was also standing open. Don't come in, screamed Samantha. I don't have my face on. Call an ambulance. He looked. Oh God, he looked. She sounded desperate and truly horrified. That made me desperate and horrified, and I wanted to rush into the bathroom, but I knew suddenly that that would be a mistake. I knew suddenly that Samantha didn't want me to look at her real face, not out of a sense of vanity, but for my own safety. Chris staggered backwards out of the bathroom. He was holding a straightened-out paperclip, which he had used to pick the privacy lock. Now he was stabbing it again and again into his eyes, shouting gibberish. He was clearly in the depths of madness, and it turned my stomach to see him mutilate himself. Call a fucking ambulance, my wife screamed. Don't come in here, he fucking looked. I turned and ran back to the side yard, where my phone was lying in the newly mowed grass. My client was still on the line, alarmed, asking what was happening, what all the screaming was. I hung up on him and called 911. When the paramedics arrived, Chris was having a seizure in the hallway. Samantha was stroking his head, sobbing. Her face was on, but it had been done hastily and everything looked a little off. My world has been dark this past week. My best friend is in a psychiatric hospital under suicide watch. He's completely blind and mostly catatonic, except when he slips into a violent babbling mania. The doctors are optimistic that his state is temporary, but they don't know the truth about what caused it, because I told the paramedics that Chris had taken a large dose of psychedelic mushrooms and fallen into psychosis. I saw no good reason to tell the truth about what had happened. Who would believe that one look at my wife's real face would make somebody insane? At best, we would be the subjects of a long investigation. At worst, we would have to prove that what we were saying was true by showing somebody Samantha's face. Then the same thing would happen again, and what after that? I had no idea, and no interest in finding out. For Samantha's part, I knew that she would never consent to show anybody her real face, no matter what the consequences of refusal were. I did get a follow-up call from the police, asking me to confirm my story. The hospital found no traces of psilocybin in Chris's blood, though that's not unheard of, since it has a short half-life. If they end up testing his hair, I will likely be in a lot of trouble, but that's truly the least of my concerns. Samantha is in a state of her own. She still cleans the inside of her face, though not as regularly, and when she puts it back on, it's always crooked now. It is beginning to smell a little bit. I've tried to assure her that it wasn't her fault. He knew, I said. I told him that nobody was ever allowed to look at it. He knew, and then he broke into the bathroom. This is not on you, baby. Please talk to me. Not on me. That one look at my fucking face makes people insane. Please, I just need some time alone. As for me, I'm doing my best to hold it together. Do you know what's strange, though? Despite what happened to Chris, I still find myself curious about what my wife's real face looks like. More curious than ever, really. My sleep paralysis demon is actually a pretty chill guy. My first memory of sleep paralysis happened when I was 10 years old. I remember because it was the night my parents took me to see Shrek 2 for getting good marks on my report card. It was an evening show, so we got in late and my mom tucked me straight into bed when we got home. It was around 4 a.m. when I woke up. The light from my alarm clock told me that much. I couldn't feel anything, not my pajamas against my skin, or the warmth of my head against the pillow. I could feel my arms and legs, but they felt heavy, as if a great weight was holding them down. I tried to call out, but I couldn't. My voice caught in my throat, my lips unable to move. I mustered a weak groan that sounded like a cross between a frog's croak and a zombie's moan, but that was it. I thought I was dead, that this is what death feels like, being awake but unable to move or tell anyone. My mind wrestled with the idea of being placed in a coffin, unable to tell anyone I was still alive in here, unable to move or say anything as the lid closed and they put me in the ground, still alive. My fear subsided as I felt my heart thudding in my chest in response to my near panic attack. I also became aware of my breathing, which slowed as the fear subsided. I calmed a little, thinking it was just a dream. That was when I saw him for the first time. Mr. Brown Sticklegs. He huddled in the corner of the room by my closet. His two oversized red eyes glowed in the dark of my bedroom. His face was like a porcelain mask, white, expressionless, with no mouth or nose, only those two haunting red eyes. When he stood up, his body unfolded like origami until his head reached the ceiling. His neck bent, tilting forward as his true height was greater than the height of my room. His long black torso was covered in shimmering symbols that reflected red in the light of his glowing eyes. He stood on two spindly thin legs that disappeared into the shadows of the room. He made no noise as he moved, seeming to glide as he hovered closer to my bed. His long, thin arms reached down to me as I moaned through paralyzed lips. I could not scream, even though I very much wanted to. His fingers reaching through the darkness down to my face. Two pointed fingers touched against my eyelids, pushing them closed. I remember his fingertips feeling cool, but not cold. Even though the ends of his fingertips looked sharp, his touch was gentle. "Do not struggle, little one. Sleep, sleep," he said. His voice was so deep I could feel it in my chest when he spoke. I did as instructed, convincing myself that it indeed was a dream. Even if it wasn't, the back of my eyelids was more reassuring than looking into those piercing red eyes. In his vacant mask of a face, I closed my eyes, wanting it to be a dream, willing it to be a dream. I woke up the next morning, thankfully able to move, walk and talk. I explained what I saw to my parents, who both agreed that it was a dream. My mum tried floating the idea that something from Shrek 2 scared me, but neither my dad or I bought it. For confirmation, Dad asked that I draw a picture of what I saw for them. As I was drawing, I ran out of black crayon and had to finish his legs with the next darkest color in my crayon box. "Hey there, Mr. Brownstick-Legs," my dad said, as I handed him the drawing. "You leave my daughter alone now, you hear?" This is how my sleep paralysis demon ended up with the name Mr. Brownstick-Legs. Giving him a silly name helped take some of the edge off of going to bed the following night. My dad even did a sweep of the room, calling out for him. "Here, Mr. Brownstick-Legs," he said, whistling as if he were calling a dog. It made me giggle, and the whole episode felt more fun than scary. But once they tucked me in and turned off the light, I felt the dread creeping back in. Darkness hits harder when you expect to find something lurking in the shadows. I don't know how long I searched, but I eventually fell asleep. In the weeks following, I searched for Mr. Brownstick-Legs every night as I fell asleep. Even when I went to sleepovers, I would do a cursory check in case he tagged along to a friend's house. As time passed, my searches became less frequent. It was a couple months later, the night before my first day of 5th grade, when I woke up to Mr. Brownstick-Legs straddled over my bed, his empty plate of a face inches from my own. A scream stuck in my throat, coming out sounding like a gush of air releasing from a pool float. "Hush, child," he said. His voice was deep, echoless. I didn't know how he spoke without a mouth, but I heard him nonetheless. I saw that he held a piece of paper in his thin fingers, crumpled on the edges and torn. He held it up to show me. On the page was a pink blob with blue dots for eyes and a droll red smile and stick lines for legs and arms. It was lying on a blue rectangle. "I found the picture you drew of me, so I drew a picture of you," he said. "Do you like it?" I tried nodding, but I couldn't move. I tried answering, but all that came out was the same dry croaking sound. "Will you draw another one for me?" "I so liked the first one, you gave me pants. I look good in pants." Again, I was unable to respond or move to give him an answer. He must have been able to read my intent, because he tucked the picture under my pillow before closing my eyes again. When I woke up in the morning, I bolted upright and tossed my pillow off the bed. My heart leapt into my throat when I found the picture. It wasn't a dream. He was real. I went to my desk and began drawing a picture for him, starting with his face and eyes, trying to capture as much detail as I could remember. I had forgotten all about the first day of school until my mom opened my door and found me still in my pajamas. "Lexi," she yelled, startling me as I was coloring in his eyes. "Your bus will be here in less than an hour. Get dressed now." I tucked my picture into my school backpack and got dressed. I finished my drawing at recess that day, using my brand new Crayola 64 pack that I got with my back-to-school supplies. I gave him blue pants this time, figuring he'd like to see himself in jeans. I wrote his name, Mr. Brownstick-Legs, at the bottom of the picture, and drew a smiley face next to it, hoping he'd like his nickname. I flipped the paper over to write him a message on the back. I wanted to ask him questions, but didn't want to anger him since he visited me when I was at my most vulnerable. I wrote out my letter on a separate piece of paper before copying it over to the back of my picture. "Dear Mr. Brownstick-Legs, that's your name. My name is Lexi. I am in the 5th grade. What is your name? How old are you? Do you go to school? Why do you visit my bedroom? Why can't I move when you visit? You look scary, but you also seem nice. I hope we can be friends. Love, Lexi P.S. I hope you like your blue pants." I added another smiley face at the end of the letter, my final emphasis on wanting to be friends. I considered closing with sincerely, but I figured love was a better, friendlier choice. I tucked the picture under my pillow that night, now anxious to see him rather than filled with dread of his reappearance. But like the last time, he did not return the next day, or the day after. The days stretched into weeks, and every morning I found the picture tucked under my pillow from the night before. It wasn't until Thanksgiving break that I saw him again. My eyes opened as the morning sun poked through the blinds of my bedroom. His body didn't look any different in the light. In fact, his black skin seemed darker, absorbing the sun's rays without giving anything back. His eyes seemed wider than before. If he had a mouth, I would have figured he was smiling. In his slender fingers was the picture I drew for him. "Hello, Lexi," he said. Thank you for the picture. I do look good in blue pants. I wanted to smile, but, well, sleep. Paralysis. He flipped the picture over to the side with my letter. I will answer your questions the best I can. I do not have a name. Not one you could ever pronounce, but I am happy for you to call me Mr. Brownsticklegs. As for my age, I exist outside of the construct of time. Therefore, I am ageless. I do not go to school, nor do I know what school is. Why do I visit you? I visit to feed on the energy of your soul. My breath quickened as a mute groan exited my teeth. I wanted to run, wanted to get away from him, but I was pinned down, unable to move. He sensed my uneasiness and tried to calm me by patting my forehead. Let me explain. Have you been to the ocean? It appears vast, almost limitless as you stare, out into the blue water, with no visible land on the other side. In my mind, I was standing on a beach. I felt the salty ocean breeze against my face as I looked out over the massive body of water. The waves crashed at my feet. I felt the rush of water over them, followed by the trickle of sand and pebbles as the water drew back. Your soul is like an ocean, child. Vast, limitless, undefinable by words to your understanding. I take only a tiny sip, a single glass of water from a vast ocean. I am not one who could consume an entire ocean. Dark clouds formed over the water as I stared at the white-capped waves. The clouds unleashed a heavy downpour, turning the horizon grey as rain fell from the sky over the ocean. Just as the rain falls over the ocean, your soul can replenish itself by more than I could ever consume, not even in 1,000 of your years. Does that make you feel better? On the beach, in my mind's vision, I nodded. In my bedroom, he nodded back at me. Good. As for your last question, why you cannot move, we are meeting at a point outside of your time, where your world and mine touch. Your physical body cannot move here, but if you persist, you can learn to speak to me with your mind. And I will answer your questions in exchange for your drawings. You can draw pictures of whatever you like. I want to know more of your world. In my mind, I nodded again. This knowledge is a gift, so we can understand one another more. I am not one who would hurt you. He pressed his fingertips to my eyelids again, closing them. In my mind's eye, I was still on the beach, but the sun was setting, and no stars were visible through the rain. I drifted back to sleep, to the sound of falling rain. The next morning, I asked my parents for a sketchbook and colored pencils. They tried to hold me off until Christmas, but since I spent most of my afternoons and weekends drawing pictures up in my room, Dad let me open one of my gifts a week early. A Strathmore sketchbook with 100 pages, with a 50-pack of Crayola-colored pencils. I started by drawing the rest of my family, Mom, Dad, my little brother Tommy, our cat Libby, and even though he had died, our dog Pancakes. Next, I drew our house, then our car, then my school. I kept drawing anything I could think of, trees, birds, insects, until my sketchbook was full. I used my allowance to purchase more books so I could keep drawing. I honed my craft, redoing my earlier drawings in greater detail. My thoughts considered his wording. I am not one who could consume an entire ocean. I wanted to ask him if there were those who could, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to know. Such things. Mr. Brownsticklegs didn't return until my freshman year of high school. To him, it wasn't like any time had passed. I read up on lucid dreaming in the time between visits, so that when he returned, I would be better capable of talking. To him, he held my book in his hands, flipping through my drawings, doting over the increased refinement of my drawing skills. I had filled a dozen sketch pads and upgraded from Crayola to Prismacolor Premier pencils for my drawings. His biggest surprise was when, after he complimented my drawings, I spoke to him. "Thank you," I said, seeing the words in my mind as I spoke them aloud. If he had a surprised expression, his eyes showed it. "You have been very busy, child," he said. "Do you have any questions you would like to ask?" I hesitated, but finally formed the words in my mind. "Are there creatures who can consume an entire ocean?" He didn't respond right away, which made me think I had not asked properly. As I asked him a second time, he put a finger to my lips as if to shush me. "There are those who can. They are known as the Dark Ones. They are capable of consuming entire souls, emptying them out, leaving them dry and barren. You should not fear them, but you should also not provoke them." His eyes curved downward as if concerned or afraid. "What do they look like?" I asked. In my mind, my visions were filled with images of great, terrible creatures. Spiders taller than the Empire State Building on thin, spindly legs of shadow and smoke. Tentacled monsters in the seas lofting blue whales like they were toys, ripping them to shreds with their curved chitinous beaks. Great, ghastly flying creatures that knocked over orchards and forests with the beat of their leathery wings. "I showed you only because you ask," Mr. Brownsticklegs said. "But it is best that we don't talk or think about them. Let them be." I nodded in my mind. He leaned forward and pressed his plate-like face to my head, as if to kiss me on the forehead, which was odd since he didn't have a mouth. Then, as usual, he closed my eyes and I drifted back to sleep. my life took a downturn during the latter years of high school. My dad lost his job, and when the search for a new one dragged on, he turned to drinking to cope with his failure. He wasn't abusive, but he wasn't fun to be around either. In the months following, my parents would hush their arguing when I entered the room, greeting me with smiles as if nothing were wrong. That lasted until the day I came home from school, to them fighting over a foreclosure notice from the bank. We moved out over a weekend from our home in the suburbs to an apartment on the other side of town. I internalized my feelings during that time. I withdrew from my friends and school activities besides the art club, the only one we could still afford. I saw my friends driving to school and hanging out while I rode the bus, too poor and too far out of the way to join in. My tastes began to change as well. Out was the bubblegum pop of Katy Perry, Keha, and Taylor Swift. Instead, I listened to Pierce the Veil, Sleeping with Sirens, and Bring Me the Horizon. My clothes and makeup became darker, more black t-shirts and skirts with black eyeliner and black fingernail polish. Mom called it my goth phase, not that she understood. My drawings became darker too. I moved from colored pencils to charcoal, drawing skulls and gothic-looking cemeteries, as my passion for drawing animals and flowers waned. I also drew the dark ones, in great detail, exactly how I remembered them in my mind's eye. Mr. Brownsticklegs visited me again a month after we moved into the apartment. He looked more at home in my room of black light posters and death metal bands than he did in my previous room. His eyes were dim, not the vibrant red as they were before. He stared at me as I lay in bed, unable to move. He moved inches from my face as I heard his words in my mind. Your soul tastes different now. He didn't speak of my drawings. I worried that he might, especially since I had been drawing the dark ones. Not only drawing them, but thinking about them, and what type of damage they could do if they were to wake. He seemed sad for me, although reading his expression was difficult, with no face. He patted my forehead like before, but didn't close my eyes before leaving as he used to. My life continued its spiraling path like a bottle rocket with a broken stick. My parents didn't talk outside of short conversations about which bills to pay and which ones to ignore. Each night, Dad disappeared into a bottle, while Mom disappeared online to chat with a male Facebook friend she knew from high school. The thing about rock bottom is that it's often a disguise for a trapdoor that drops you to an even lower depth than you thought possible. The first bottom came when my father died. Drove off the road into a gravel pit late at night with an empty bottle of bourbon in the passenger seat. I cried, but it felt hollow. I felt hollow. Even when Mum tried to hold me, I felt nothing inside. Not sadness, not guilt, not anything. Disappeared into my sketchbooks, drawing even darker, more disturbing images. Death, dismemberment, vividly accurate vivisections of the cute animals I used to enjoy drawing. My friends no longer talked to me, which was fine because I didn't want to talk to them anymore anyways. I found people to hang out with, not friends, but people who could get me access to moments of chemical-induced euphoria to forget about life for a while. Just like that, the trapdoor opened, dropping me to a new rock bottom of addiction. One thing I had that in common with my dad, but instead of falling into a bottle, I fell into a needle. I stole money from my mum's purse to feed my habits, not that she noticed. She was busy with her old Facebook friend who had moved from online acquaintance to nightly sleepover companion. When the time came to begin my senior year, I didn't bother going back. I kept drawing, filling entire sketchbooks with the dark images that reflected my bleak outlook on life. The dark ones were prevalent subjects during this period of my life. I drew them feasting on humanity, raking flesh from bone in their jagged teeth behind lips of smoke. I came home one night to find my mum and her new male friend in the middle of a fight. It was different from her fights with Dad, more violent, more physical. When he raised his hand at me for trying to intervene, I decided it was time to bolt. I left home hitching rides with anyone with a set of wheels I could manage to put up with for short periods of time. My preference leaned toward those with access to the chemical release I craved. The more I could numb, the more I could escape. I found certain drug combinations had similar effects to sleep paralysis, where my mind's ability to control my body's action became severed. In those moments of numbed paralysis, I'd see Mr. Brownsticklegs watching from afar as I dulled the pain. I saw what I perceived as the dark ones too, but they weren't hiding in the shadows like Mr. Brownsticklegs did. They were the shadows, called out to them as well, for in those moments I wanted nothing more than to be hollowed out and empty, a void so dark no pain could ever penetrate it. When they didn't answer, I called out to Mr. Brownsticklegs, but he would vanish every time. Perhaps it was all just a drug-fueled hallucination. Overdosing was never my intention. I was pushing too much, trying to find the edge of the void. After feeling so low, so very low, searching for that something extra to filter out the background noise, I took it too far, giving myself a near-lethal dose. At one moment, I was lying next to strangers on a stained mattress in an abandoned warehouse. Then came the initial rush of euphoric bliss. And then, nothing. Whoever I was traveling with at the time dumped me on the curb in front of the ER, making me someone else's problem. This was my rock-bottom moment, although at the time it felt more like freefall. I spent 3 weeks in a coma. I was aware of my surroundings and could hear the doctors and nurses as they checked my vitals and tended to my cleanliness and upkeep, but I couldn't move or speak. At the end of my 3rd week in the ICU on an incubator, I looked up to find Mr. Brownsticklegs hovering over me, his round red eyes peering through the darkness. "What have you done to yourself, child?" His voice spoke inside my mind. In my mind, I was beside him, standing in the middle of a vast salt-flat desert. The ground was cracked and dry in a hexagonal pattern that stretched in all directions. "This is your soul now. There is nothing left to drink." I heard my beep of my heart rate monitor, back in my hospital room, speed up as fear entered my mind. I called out to the Dark Ones, I said. I asked for them to come. They emptied me out, emptied my soul. "No, my child, you did this. You have not replenished, you have only consumed, and now nothing remains." I dropped to my knees in the middle of the salt as I felt a rumbling deep inside the hollow pit of my stomach. I leaned forward onto my arms, but they were no longer my arms. They were pitch black and empty. I could feel them, but when I looked at them, they were empty voids of smoke and shadow. I stood up on my legs, but they were no longer my legs. The darkness swirled up my torso and down my arms. The emptiness inside me consumed my entire body until only my head remained. What's happening to me? I heard a snap as my arms and legs split, forming 8 black, spindly, thin legs. I collapsed onto them, unable to support myself. Mr. Brownsticklegs glided down in front of my face, his eyes inches from my own. "As I told you, child, only the Dark Ones have the ability to consume an entire ocean of a soul. That is your fate. That is what you will become." Back in the room, my heart rate monitor crashed to a flatline. I felt the cold darkness swirl up my neck to my head as the void consumed me. I was aware of the nurses and doctors huddled around. My body, prepping the crash cart, but all I felt was the cold consuming what was left of me. "Help me," I uttered. "Please." My physical body jolted from the electric paddles, but I felt nothing, only the cold darkness. A needle injected into my IV line as they recharged for another burst of electricity. Still, I felt nothing. Only cold, only darkness, only the vast emptiness of the void. Mr. Brownsticklegs tilted his head as he stared through his unblinking red eyes. He leaned forward, pressing his plate-like face to my forehead. I felt a vibration against my skin, followed by the tingling sensation of heat returning. The darkness receded back down my arms and legs. As he pulled back, the red in his eyes had diminished. A gift for the girl who gave me pants. A tear formed in my eye. It rolled down my cheek and fell onto the parched landscape below. Before I could say anything, an electronic jolt coursed through my body, pulling me away from the salt-flat expanse and back to my hospital room. The sinus rhythm of my heart rate monitor returned to normal. I felt the cool gel of the defibrillator paddles against my chest. I remember squeezing the hand of one of the attending nurses, who smiled down at me. "Look who's awake," I cried. But it was different than before. I felt the pain I had long been avoiding, but I felt something else as well. I felt grateful, and I felt a sense of hope I hadn't known in a long time. It was a long road back from the darkness, but the thing about the road to recovery is that, like a road, it leads to a destination. After years of listless drifting towards the void, having a destination was an important first step in finding self-love. I reconnected with my mother, who was struggling with her own form of the darkness. We leaned on one another, talking and going to therapy as we worked through the issues that drove us apart. After my release from the hospital, I moved back home with her Facebook friend long gone. I got my GED and used my many sketchbooks as a portfolio to get an apprenticeship at a tattoo parlor. I've been clean for 4 years now, and it feels good to smile again. Granted, I still prefer Pierce the Veil to anything from Katy Perry's catalogue, and my tattoos and jewelry have more skulls than fluffy bunnies, but that's all on the surface. I no longer crave the darkness to consume me. I often think about the vision with Mr. Brownsticklegs on the salt flats that night in the hospital. I had not seen him since that night, and I often wonder about the state of my soul since that day. Has it replenished, or is it still the dried-up, barren wasteland that he took me to on the night? Last night, around 3 in the morning, I finally got my answer. I woke up with a heaviness on my chest, arms and legs. At first I felt the grips of fear grabbing hold, much like the first time I experienced it. But then in the dark corner of my room, I saw glowing red eyes staring back at me from the shadows. In spite of my sleep paralysis, couldn't help but smile when I heard his voice call out to me. All of the women in my family die at age 27. I turned 28 in 2 hours and 32 minutes. Series. My dad always wanted a son. He got 3 daughters instead. He hated us all, hated my twin sisters, hated my mother, but hated me most of all because I was the last child my mother had before she died. That didn't stop him from treating me like his little boy. Didn't stop him from attempting to beat the hatred of my own gender into me. Quit your crying, he'd snap, or you'll end up like your sniveling bitch of a mother. After years of that shit, he was shocked that I grew up as a tomboy. I think he hated that even more because I was just a constant reminder of what he never got to have. My mother died when she was only 27, when I was only 4. The coroner ruled her death a natural passing, some weird heart complication that took her in her sleep. My dad, though, he says it was because of her family's curse. Whenever I came to him, desperate for more information about a mother, I never really knew he never had much to say. I'm convinced he was just drunk since the day she died. Every woman in her damn family, they die when they're 27. He'd sputter in between belches, his breath reeking of stale beer. I think the real curse is that my mum was the one to die and not him. I wasn't fully convinced by the ramblings of a perpetually drunk man, but when I lost both of my sisters just months before their 28th birthday, I knew it couldn't be a coincidence. Moira was found murdered, her face practically blasted off by a shooter while she was on a jog. Joy took her own life only days later. I was the one who found her, hanging in the bedroom of her apartment as I came to pick her up for Moira's funeral. She'd been there swinging from the rafters all night. It's hard to live a normal life when you know you have an expiration date, especially when it encompasses an entire year. I always dreaded my birthday, which from an early age became associated less with fun and birthday cake, and more with worry and funeral caskets. But once Moira and Joy died, my next birthday, 25, was the most dreadful day of my life. 26 was worse, 27 unimaginable. This is it, I thought, as I closed all of the blinds in my apartment, downing the last drop of vodka in the bottle. This is the last year of my life. 27 has been uneventful, to say the least. Why would I make any long-term plans, forge any meaningful relationships, when I know they simply cannot last? The worst part of this last year has been simply not knowing when my impending death is coming. It could have been any day within the last 364. It could be within the next minute. I must admit, I became something of a recluse, my windows always shuttered, additional locks installed in my door, letting the phone ring through to voicemail, hiding under my covers with the lights out whenever I got a knock on my door. I stocked up on preserved foods and various goods that I would need to last the year. I was so paranoid that I even covered my mail slot, stuffed a towel in the space beneath my front door. I didn't want anything getting through from the outside. World, God forbid an anthrax letter. Falling off the face of the earth didn't matter much anyway. I didn't have friends or family anymore. My mother and both of my sisters were dead, and my dad disowned me when I came out as a lesbian after my sisters died. I moved away and severed contact soon after. The night before my 27th birthday, I started getting these strange phone calls from a blocked number. I've always had anxiety about phone calls, so I just let it ring. The number kept calling at least once per day throughout the past year. Then the knocking started. Once a week at first, but it's only been getting worse, more frequent, and the pounding on my door more frantic each time. Convinced it had something to do with my inevitable death, I've been driven mad by the unknown visitor, especially over the past week. I got ready for bed last night, knowing that tomorrow, today, now, is the day I will turn 28. My time had run out, and I searched for comfort in a bottle of liquor. I didn't find it. I fell into bed, drunk and delirious, and prayed the morning wouldn't come, though I knew it would. I eventually got to sleep, but it was restless and unsatisfying. The kind of sleep where you feel like you have one eye open, always watching. That's why I was quick to wake when the door to my bedroom creaked open early in the morning. Before the first sign of light, I shot up in my bed, glancing around my room in a frenzied panic. At first seeing nothing out of the ordinary other than the door, pushed slightly ajar. A closer look revealed something I'd missed, something that sent my heart racing, froze me to my core. 2 dark figures stood in the empty space behind the half-open door, unmoving, almost like a pair of statues, waiting, watching, wordless. "Leave me. Leave me alone," I squeaked, unable to move, paralyzed in the power of their presence. The shadowy figures instead shuffled out from behind the door, creeping slowly towards me in the dark. I knew this would certainly be the end of my life, the fulfillment of my curse if I didn't act. Suddenly recalling the self-defense methods I'd drilled into my mind, I flipped my bedside lamp on to stun the intruders and reached underneath the table to pull the knife I'd duct taped there a year ago. a 27th birthday gift to myself. As soon as the light flooded the room, though, I knew the blade would be of no use. My intruders were not a pair of assassins, not human. Ones at least. In the yellow light of the lamp, I discerned the identities of the dark figures. They were my sisters. Joy stood at the foot of my bed, pale in that same conservative black dress I'd found her dead in years ago, the one she picked out for Moira's funeral. Her head hung parallel to her shoulders, neck grotesquely bent from her hanging. Moira was a few steps behind her. I could only assume it was her, considering the severity of her injuries. She'd suffered a gunshot wound to the head, so brutal that we were not allowed to see her after her death, so intense that it had entirely disfigured her face. The lower half of her face had been reduced to a pit of gore, her jawbone barely attached on one side, her mouth mangled, with only several teeth remaining studded randomly throughout the mess. "Why are you here?" I cried, gathering my knees to my chest and holding them tight. Are you here to take me?" Joy made a feeble attempt to shake her head, the side of her face only brushing weakly against her shoulder. She waited several moments before putting one of her feet in front of the other, moving towards the side of my bed. As I recoiled instinctively, she slowed her pace. Moira trailed after her until they were both beside me. I whimpered as Joy leaned over me, her head flopping forward suddenly with the motion, neck cracking sickeningly. With her lips brushing against my ear, she whispered, She tried." Her speech was labored and wheezing, as if her vocal cords had nearly been shredded. "What? Do you mean, Joy?" I pleaded. Her lips moved against my ear once more, but no sounds came out despite a clear, strenuous effort. Moira wagered an attempt at answering my query, but only succeeded in sputtering blood from the gaping wound in her face, ejecting one of her remaining teeth onto the floor as her jawbone swung precariously, barely hanging on. She raised one hand, slowly curling it into a fist before striking her knuckles furiously against my bedpost. The incessant sounds startling me, I forced my eyes shut tight and pulled my knees even closer against my chest. Moira's knocking seemed only to escalate in volume, seemed to go on forever until, finally, it stopped. I cracked my eyes open to find that both of my sisters had vanished, that the light of early morning had begun to spill in through the slats of my blinds. It was just past 6 o'clock, the 7th of June, the day of my 28th birthday. I was born at 9:26 a.m. Once I learned of the curse, I burned the time of my ultimate expiration into my mind. I only had 3 hours and 16 minutes left to live, if I even had that long. Draping my covers over my head, I resolved to spend the rest of my life asleep. I figured I'd rather pass peacefully in my sleep like my mother did than to suffer a fate similar to my sister's. My plans were interrupted, however, by that damned knocking on the door. The interruption usually didn't come so early in the morning. I decided initially to ignore the strange visitor, but pulled the blankets back down soon after, as a certain sense of familiarity struck me. The pounding on the door reminded me all too much of Moira's knocking just moments before. It easily could have been a trick of the curse, but something compelled me to approach the door. "What do you want?" I called from behind the barrier, clinging to the relative safety it provided. The reply came from an unfamiliar man's voice. "I just have a letter for you, miss. Just slide it under the door and please leave," I returned, using my bare foot to remove the towel I used to block the small space beneath it. He deposited a bright yellow envelope under the door as I requested. I waited quietly for the sounds of receding footsteps before sliding on a pair of gloves to handle the letter. It was addressed to me simply by first name and with no address. Carefully, I unsealed the envelope to reveal a birthday card. I hadn't received one in years. Bright, sparkling letters on the front formed the words, "Daughter, you're 27. I scoffed at the sick joke. I hadn't received a birthday card since I was a child, and my dad couldn't even get my birthday right. I didn't think he even knew my address. I cracked it open gingerly to read the message inside. "Laura, if you're reading this, your father has killed me. Don't believe a thing he or the police say. I was not the target of a random attack. I did not die of natural causes, and I certainly did not commit suicide. I would never leave you if I had the choice. The truth is, I died is because I found the truth behind my family's curse and foolishly told your father. He was in on it the whole time, planted in my life by some secret society to eradicate me, to eradicate us. What we have is not a curse, it is a gift of immense power. The power to heal, but the power to harm just the same. We come into our power at the age of 28, a number associated with independence, leadership, and self-sufficiency. An age where we can handle the responsibility such a power inevitably comes with. It's a strong number, and you will come into great strength, though you've always been a strong girl. I hope you've made it this far, but at the same time, I know you have. You were always a feisty little girl for the 4 years I had the pleasure of knowing you, of loving you. You never let anyone tell you what to think or do, especially not your father. Happy birthday. I love you. Mom, I closed the card softly, thinking on the strained words of my sister. Mom had tried to warn them, but they didn't listen. The pieces of the puzzle slid into place. My dad must have murdered Moira, and Joy ended her own life out of grief and a belief that she would inevitably be next. At the time of writing this, I only have 2 hours and 32 minutes until I officially turn 28. Over the past hour or so, I've already begun to feel the power flowing into my body, electrifying as it runs through my veins. I will the towel to reposition itself under the door, and it does so, sliding across the floor on its own. I need to keep myself safe until 9:26 after all. I'm planning on surprising my father with a visit for my birthday.